Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
Scree Gear is more than apparel. It's a tribute to the relentless, the tireless, the true guardians of the wilderness. It's for those who seek not just a game, but a legacy. Not just a sport, but a way of life. In our gear, you're more than a hunter. You're a story, a tradition, a legend in the making. Scree is your journey, your triumph, your success. Join the working man revolution. Success awaits.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast with Kevin and Chuck. Today, we're going to talk about, preparing your kids to be, or raising your kids to be preppers. How about that? I don't know. When you're a prepper, a lot of the things that gets overlooked is kind of like planning for the kids, how to deal with it. But I think a lot of it is that kind of prepper mindset and things that, affect who your kids are. And it's really just kind of how we raise them. But we're going to cover some stuff and things you can do. I guess the first thing when you're bringing a kid into the world and preparing, everything, and you want everything to go smoothly, I guess you kind of start with the house, right? The environment that you put them in. We buy them the safe car seat and the different things to take them out and make sure they have the right clothes and whatever. But there's a lot of things you can do right at home that really make your house a little better for kids. Kevin, kind of where would you start?
Well, I think a lot of stuff gets overlooked when I hear people. I was talking to somebody and they said something about they had a kid on the way and they really wanted to step up their preps, and they were telling me about the different things they were going to do as far as getting a camp stove and camping gear and stocking up on ammunition and things like that. But
camouflage baby carrier.
Yeah. But one of the things that gets overlooked with that sort of stuff is the basic safety. The basic safety things that are most likely to really happen and affect your kids. And I think a lot of people overlook a lot of the basic safety when it comes to kids, like smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. You should have those in any room that somebody's sleeping. And, also near, where you're most likely to have a fire start or, carbon monoxide leak, down by your furnace or your wood stove or something like that. It's a lot of that basic safety stuff gets overlooked a lot of the time. Also fire extinguishers. I know people that have fire extinguishers and they're, out in their garage underneath a bunch of fucking crap, that you can't even get to. Fire extinguishers should be strategically placed, in the kitchen, underneath the sink or wherever, in the basement next to your wood stove, near your wood stove, not next to it. You don't want the damn thing exploding, but you get the idea. You want to have them accessible.
Right.
Also, you want to have a basic home escape plan. If there is a fire or, some sort of an emergency, which is, it's pretty straightforward, but you also have to think about, if you have a second floor or a third floor, you also have to think about how you might be able to get out of those, the second or third floor. Having a plan for that sort of stuff is pretty important when it comes to basic everyday safety. But as far as having a new kid, I think there's a lot of little baby books that tell you all the dumb shit you need to do. Well, do all that dumb shit, you know? Put the little plugs in the outlets that aren't being used, and get the Mr. Yuck stickers and lock your cabinets, you know? Do you remember Mr. Yuck? You remember Mr. Yuck stickers? I was talking to somebody, and they had no idea what I was talking about. There's...
Yeah, but that's because we're old.
Is that what it is? They don't have Mr. Yuck anymore?
Mm. They don't have to bother because now kids are eating the Tide Pods and whatever. It's kind of normal to.
You just do it, huh? You just eat that.
You know, we're a chemical world. You know, it's chemical age.
Yeah.
I think now they actually say, all right, instead of the dumb stickers, how about you just lock your supply cabinet and keep the kid out of there? Mm-hmm. That's the other way to go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was always raised when I was a kid, you know, to learn from your mistakes. So, you know,
they
just fed me, you know, bleach and shit like that, and don't do that again.
When you were putting the fork in the electrical socket, they were like, "Hey, come here, watch this."
Yeah. Nope, it's not going to work with 4 prongs. You have to bend 2 of those prongs back first, so it'll fit in.
Yeah. You're a horrible parent. That's what that sounds like.
Now,
I thought you just get like a good pet, like think Flipper or maybe Lassie.
Right.
And then the pet does the parenting for you.
Right. That's really how it's supposed to work.
Whatever happened to Flipper? You never see that anymore. I mean, that was
they remade Lassie a million times, but they didn't remake. You know, they really, from what I hear, they really like treated Flipper like shit when he wasn't on TV.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
All right.
The remote.
I am told that the future holds a lot of. Okay, I was told that they're talking about AI and robots in the future. That one of the big things they're worried about, and this is actually true. You can look this up. They're making robot freaking dolphins because it's such an outcry that we have all these ones at like SeaWorld and stuff, and it's just not fair to them. They need to go back to the wild. So we need robot dolphins to, take their place that we won't even notice the difference. They're just trying to work out the tricks. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I don't think that's important. That's not a concern of mine.
Okay. I mean, hey, teach his own.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't care about the cute dolphins and killer whales. I mean,
seriously, though, fuck those dolphins. Dolphins rape people.
No, is this not a kid-friendly episode? All right. So anyway, back to raising kids. So the house, anything else to kind of like maybe some escape routes?
Yeah.
You said you needed a plan.
Yeah, you want to have an escape plan, and you want to have your kids have to know about the plan. It doesn't help if it's just you and the missus and the kids don't know what the fuck's going on. Yeah. So
no, not bad. Yeah.
Another thing that we should mention is along with the Mr. Yuck is the medicine cabinet. Most kids, when they're old enough to get into the medicine cabinet, they're old enough to know better, and they have the safety locks on the medicine, most of the medicine and stuff like that. But it's good to keep it secured that a toddler isn't going to climb up on something and get in there, or, wherever you store your medication. Make sure it's not easily accessible to the little guys.
Or mom keeps the mints and the Xanax in the purse, and they're right next to each other. Kids always like, well, I like the mints. Maybe I'll like the Xanax. Mommy likes the Xanax.
Mommy likes it.
I don't know.
Yeah. Now, what do you think? I saw a million posts here that recommended locking up your guns. Now, what is your position on locking up guns?
I would recommend don't have kids then. And that just solves that problem. It's one of those takes care of itself. I mean, I think so. I live in a home where we worry about that kind of thing. And so what I find is the guns, honestly, I live in a state where it works out, where the gun's on my hip 99% of the time. Check it out. There it is.
He's ready to go.
And, because it's there. And then, so the gun's there. If it's on your person, you're kind of, what do they say, in positive control of it.
Right.
There's no reason that the rest of the guns can't be put away. If your handgun is your kind of go-to home defense weapon, then having your handgun, when you're setting it on the nightstand, when you're going to bed or whatever, I don't see an issue with that when it's in your control. Now, leaving it on the kitchen counter when you come in, like all the cop buddies I have and whatever, that's maybe not, the same thing, where you come in and you're like, yep, I'm setting it down, whatever.
Right. Keys, wallet, gun.
That's another, right. That's another story. But, so that's my go-to. If you're in positive control, if you're in the room, you're sleeping. But what? Your 3-year-old's not going to, whatever. That's my take. Teach, their own. Everybody do their thing. I'm sure there's some horrible story if you look on the internet of the one time that it went wrong where the guy had it on his nightstand. And it doesn't mean you can't. What I actually do is I have a bookshelf right next to my bed, and I end up I have it set like in the shelves kind of thing where it's very accessible, and I also have those like night glow night sights, so it's kind of pretty easy to see in the dark, to just reach over and grab it, but it's not something you walk in and see as obvious. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know, it's not something that's, hey, look at this fun treat right here for me.
Right.
I do think it is kind of irresponsible on the women keeping them in their purse and whatever when they have the little kids, and you always see, these stories of the purse and all that, where it becomes an issue. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with a woman keeping it on her person, but not in your control, leaving it in a bag that you just leave around, I think is a horrible idea.
Right.
And I think that's a horrible idea anywhere, whether you have small kids or not,
Right. And I think that when it comes to, guns and kids, I think it's important. One of the important things to do is make sure that your kids understand what a gun is and how it works. You know what I mean? Kids aren't always like stealing dad's keys and running out and driving the car around because they're familiar with the car and how it operates. They're not curious about it, And, obviously you're not going to train a 3 or 4-year-old how to use a firearm. But, when your kids start reaching 9, 10, 11 years old, you can teach them basic firearm safety. And, even take them out, show them how it works and that sort of stuff. And, make it less of an oddity or a curiosity that they want to play with it. And I think keeping, like you said, keeping the majority of your firearms locked in a safe is a great idea, just to keep it from getting stolen and a lot of other reasons. But, having something accessible to your person, like you said, on your nightstand while you're sleeping, it's not going to be so interesting to them to play with if they're familiar with it.
Yep. And again, I mean, if you want to take it to the next level, they have the hand, the hand locks and the different, you have the little vaults that you can do that are quick and easy, and that's fine too. I have no problem with that, but I don't know. I mean, again, your lifestyle, is your 2-year-old sneaking in your bed while you're asleep or whatever every night? But then maybe you do want something a little more secure, it really depends on your lifestyle and your instance, your kids. But I think the positive control is really the answer, just keeping it where it's with you rather than, around, what kind of stuff when we worry about the end of the world? I know everybody likes to have stuff, and what kind of things come up? Like, what do you need as a as a parent that you wouldn't need otherwise? Well, I know it's tough when you're a new parent, right? When they're brand new babies, right? Breastfeeding is going to be hopefully your answer, not so much the health and all that, although I think that's the case. But the bottom line, dealing with formula and stuff is going to be tough.
Right. Having
it's
access
be
to
hard.
clean water might not be the might not be the best thing, or might not be the easiest thing. Right.
If you're breastfeeding, you're still going to want to have a stockpile of formula if you're really seriously considering, issues. Moms should have multivitamins, something to keep up the vitamin level, bleach and stuff, cleaning supplies for the bottles. Think about babies, think about cloth diapers. Think about an alternative because, man, you can't stockpile enough diapers to get you through the apocalypse. Think about baby wipes, which are always a great, stockpile item anyway, whether you have babies or not. And one of the things I've had trying to buy like bulk baby wipes or whatever, they always seem to be dried out whenever I get around to them. So I don't know, kind of see what happens there and test it out. You may want to also think of something to keep your kid distracted, calm, quiet, and happy. One of the things that people do sometimes, like, that was, they talked about in the movie The Pianist, one of the mothers, they were being rounded up, and she, they just showed in the scene was she was all despondent because she had killed her baby by accident by like smothering him so much trying to keep him quiet from the Nazis.
Right.
And that's a thing. Like, how do you, if you're trying to hide or something, in that scary prepper world or bad people come, do you have a way to keep your kids, quiet? And it's damn near impossible with certain ages. Do you maybe have like a quiet room, a place that's insulated well that you could really, go hide? Do you have a good hide place? Lollipops are a nice thing to keep, their mouths distracted and whatever, things like that. But what else? What other kind of stuff, Kevin? What would you think you'd need for supplies? Or is that really the...
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that if you're ever packed a baby bag to take baby out for a trip, you always need to have snacks. And one of the great things for that is cereal. Cereal, you can store that in a Ziploc bag in an airtight, type of thing, and it'll last for a long time. If you store it properly,
and you rotate it out.
Right. And another thing that I think is important for kids when they have their own rooms and when they're getting a little bit older is keep things for them, their own like gear together for them. Like a flashlight right next. Yeah, they're gonna lose that flashlight every couple of days, and you're gonna have to get a new one. That's fine. You can have 5,000 flashlights in your house. It's not that's probably a good thing when you're randomly finding flashlights all over. And yeah, they're gonna shine it in your face, and you're gonna lose, be night blind and things like that. But having that sort of safety stuff kind of gives your kid their own sense of, that they can take care of themselves. They have the ability to help maintain their own lifestyle and their own safety. And as the kids get older, you have to teach them how to do stuff. Don't have a swimming pool in the backyard that you have to fence in and worry about all the time. Teach your kids how to swim,
Kevin, the laws say we have to fence it in.
Well, so, that's fine. You can fence it in, but teach your kids how to swim, and you can start when they're little, 2-3 years old. You can start infants. You can start putting them in the water.
Yeah. No, they really do. They get them swimming so early. Last thing, like I would as far as gear goes, I didn't want to let it get away. Is think of a good infant carrier or ways, or even as your kids get a little older in that 4 and 5. A 4 and 5 year old isn't going to be able to make a 10-mile hike, that kind of thing. You need to think of ways to, help them move, to carry the extra gear related to a kid. Think of what your kid needs. Like Kevin was saying with the diaper bag or whatever, you end up with so much stuff in there, and that's just for going out, going into town or whatever. You bring all that. So there are a lot of supplies. Kids constantly need snacks and whatever to keep them happy. You're going with the carbs, all the time. So it is something you want to be aware of. But I think one of the biggest parts of raising your kids and having them be able to handle or deal with disaster situations is to make your kids confident.
Mm-hmm.
And, teach your kids to be confident, self-assured, and the way to do it, we're going to, give you some tips, because there's a lot of steps you can take that will give your kids, the confidence to feel like they can take care of themselves. That's what's really going to make the difference. The kids that are going to thrive in a tough situation, in the aftermath of a hurricane, in the apocalypse, are going to be the ones that, aren't terrified.
Right.
The ones that actually can take care of themselves to some extent. And that's the thing. The more somebody knows how to take care of themselves, the more confident they're going to be, because you're not going to be afraid when you can handle a situation. So how do we do that? How do we make our kids confident?
Yeah, well, I mean, that is a good point. Before we get into that, is don't scare your kids about shit. That's not helpful. Having your kids afraid of everything is not a good situation. To me personally, no. I really like kids that are just, bad kids. I like bad kids, kids that throw rocks at cats and shit. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But when I have like the bad kid from the neighborhood, the little bully, the little jerk around the neighborhood, and I take them with me and my kids and go out camping and stuff, they love that shit. You know what I mean? They love being outdoors and doing the outdoor stuff. And, all of a sudden they start listening because somebody's paying attention to them. All of a sudden they start behaving themselves. And, when it comes to, teaching kids about prepping and things like that, one of the best ways to do it is to make it, a fun adventure. Like taking your kids out camping, taking them out hiking, doing those outdoor stuff that's fun for them. Take them down to the local swimming hole and that sort of stuff. We talked briefly about, teaching kids how to shoot, and, having a 22 or even a BB gun for the kids to practice with is, real helpful.
Yeah. Definitely BB gun, paintball, that kind of thing. Airsoft, I guess, is the new modern world. So, and even laser tag, that kind of stuff, early on, very early, you could start with something like that. So there's a lot of books that I think you could start out with. They have Who Pooped in the Woods, Scat and Tracks, all kinds of little, Who Pooped in the Northwoods. They have Who Pooped in the Desert, all kinds of books like that. But there's actually, I even saw a whole series called the Outdoor School Series. Now that one I have not read. I have read the Who Pooped in the Woods and the ones like that. Those I can vouch for. They're pretty cool, and they're gonna take your kid to the next level. Now, a lot of that is not that your kid should be a tracker and you need to make your kid into the survival whatever. No, it's one, you're teaching them a useful skill, but two, you're teaching them confidence. Because if you understand what's going on and how things work, then you're going to end up being confident and less scared of it. Right. When you hear a noise in the woods, oh, I bet that's this animal that I already know about. Mm-hmm. And I know what kind of threat that animal is to me or not to me.
Yeah.
If you should be afraid or not afraid. That kind of thing. Uh, well, I know this is the touchy one. Everyone hated Rush Limbaugh. I thought he was pretty cool, to be honest. But he had those Rush Revere books,
Hmm.
but they were really pretty good. There's another set of books. There's a guy, Brian Smith, that has a bunch of children books on executive function, and it's kid stories, but on how to handle the basic life skills that so many kids are becoming young adults and don't have. And there are things like how to be organized. Oh, I lost my thing, and what do I do? And it's geared towards that. I think they're like 4 and 5 year old. It might be 10, 11. I don't know, little kids. I don't really remember the ages and whatever.
Hmm.
But there's all these books on that executive function, and it helps you sort out how to navigate life, and teaching your kids those skills is crucial. One of the things, like, I think back to my childhood, and you compare to all the kids with the video games now, and obviously there were some kind of video games when we were kids, but it was all very limited. I think I did still grow up in the generation where we had Mario and whatever. But and it started out, I'm so old, it was like Pong, and then
I
went
remember Atari. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Pitfall and Contra, and then moved into whatever. But here's the thing.
And if
I
I
think
recall
kids,
correctly,
yeah.
I
Uh-oh.
believe that you had the famous ET Atari game
Oh, I
that
think there
didn't
was an ET.
that did nothing. Like there was
Yeah,
no
I think
point
it
in the
was
game.
you found little Reese's Pieces around the,
Yeah,
like, you'd find, I don't know. It sounds horrible, but
it was. Yeah, it was
yeah,
a horrible game.
you remember better than me on that one. But anyway, the idea is, what I was going to get at is, kids stare at their phone and whatever. And yeah, it's cool that you have, the information. They always say, oh, well, you having a cell phone and the way the internet is now, you have more information than when Bill Clinton was president. You have more access to real time information. And yeah, that's neat, but nah, no. It's not really the win. Thing is, that information's always there, and you can go get it when you want it.
Hmm.
So nothing is gained by staring at Facebook 24/7. And I was trying to compare in my head, like, my childhood versus the childhood that somebody has now, where they sit there and we have all these games and stimulation and different things. And I wouldn't trade it. I mean, I had such a great time outside doing things,
Hmm.
and I think there's nothing wrong with that. No, I'm not saying your kids need to be, working on the farm nonstop, whatever, but getting stuff done is good, but also go on out and do things. It
Hmm.
doesn't just have to be, yeah, do outside chores, go chop wood, go feed all the animals, go stack hay, go whatever. It doesn't have to be all that. It can be, hey, let's go camping. Let's go as a
Hmm.
family and do some fun things. Make time for your kids, spend time with each other, and maybe that does cost you some work dollars or whatever, where you don't have as much stuff and things, but let's get them outside. So there's a lot of things, a lot of skills, like how to read a map, right? Have a day or
Right.
days where you do navigation. What if
Hmm.
you even drew a map of your yard? Hey kids, let's, all right, my yard's only a quarter of an acre. That wouldn't be that fun. Maybe you do that when they're even smaller. But what if
Hmm.
we went to the park and we mapped it out?
Right.
Or we like to go to, I know where I lived in New York, there were some mountains and whatever, and there's a bunch of trails. What if we drew out those trails, or we got a map and we navigated them without the signs and we figured it out?
Hmm.
These are the kind of things you could be doing and really understand how to navigate, how to build a fire, right? That you can do in a small yard and, in a closed area. It doesn't have to be a big fire. You can make
Right.
a really small fire and just see what you can do. Um, what to do, like how to find water. Dude, if you watch some YouTube, And yeah, you get to use your phone for that. You get a little time on the computer. Go figure out how to freaking, where to find water in the woods. There are actually some tricks like that. How to tap a tree and get water out of a tree. That's something you can figure out. These are things that, I know me and my job now, obviously everybody's world is different. My job, I might have an hour or two of downtime where I can spend a little time doing research. I could put together a project list where on the weekend, and I don't mean, your kids are going to be like, screw you. If you're like, hey, here's some ideas, go make this work. They're not going to be into it. But if you make the time to go spend 2 hours, and maybe you don't sleep in on Saturday, maybe you get up at 7 or whatever, or 6 or whatever is early for you. You go run the errands you have to run, or you go out with your kid at 6 and say, hey, tomorrow morning, we're going to go, do this for 3 hours, and you still have your day. There's ways to do it. There's ways to find time to spend time with your kids, but these are the things that are going to build confidence. Looking for like a emergency first aid class, something like that. And they have ones that are kind of geared towards kids. And, some of them have age limits and, you can only do this class if you're 16 and older or whatever. All right. But you do the ones you can do. And there is a lot of video series and things like that. But you know what? If you made it fun, if you got some of the supplies and, hey, I'm going to order $30 worth of bandages and nonsense, or you know what would be cool for little kids, like a 10-year-old, they have those home suture kits, and they have with the fake skin, and you can practice suturing it up. Yep. Tell me a kid wouldn't love spending the time and doing that and learning how to do it. And that skill wouldn't build confidence and be a useful skill that they'd have throughout life. I mean, tell me I'm wrong on that. That's a good time, right?
Right.
Maybe it's gross and whatever. I don't know. I think that's a good time. I think kids want to spend time with you. They want to learn what you know. They look to you as a hero. And if they don't, maybe there's another issue there that you need to look at, but that's the thing. You should be making time and show them that they're important and valuable. That's, I don't know if you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, you guys know, that I did some work with groups dealing with recovering people from sex trafficking and things like that. And one of the things they look for is kids that are vulnerable, that can be manipulated and whatever. And the reason that they're vulnerable is because they don't have confidence. They look for the kid who runs around and is like, hey, I had a bad childhood and my mom doesn't love me and I'm neglected, or dad hits me and whatever, or hey, I just have really bad self-esteem and I look bad at myself and whatever. Those are the kids, because the kids don't see themselves as valuable. And therefore they would rather, hey, I'll hurt your family if you don't come with me. They don't see themselves as having value. Whereas when a kid has confidence and a kid sees themselves as a valuable player, they see that mom and dad love me. They see that, hey, one, I can handle my own business. I don't need somebody else. Hey, I know things will work out when I go to my parents and I talk to them. And, some of the stories, you go back to our older episodes, I talked about the different things. It really, can be rough, but there's so much that confidence will do for your kids. And I'm telling you, these are the ways to do it. And yet I'm giving all the examples of outdoor skills. I mean, teaching your kids the basics at home inside, how to prepare a meal. Hey, each one of the kids needs to make a meal next week. And I'm going to teach you one meal that you can make, with everything, and go through the steps. Preferably something that you're going to typically have on hand so they can always kind of take charge. The more people can handle things, the better it's going to be. And you can really develop, better tasting meals and more complicated and whatever. Hey, we're going to bake brownies. Hey, we're going to, do this. You just get more and more. And that confidence is going to be what, takes your kids into the next level, and it's going to keep them out of trouble. Another thing, I hate to say, a little scarier end of things, recognizing that there are bad people out there. People like to paint a nice, happy picture and live in this fantasy world of everything is good and everyone means well and, all that. That's not really the case in the real world. People don't always mean good. Not everybody's good. Even teachers might not be, when your kid's a 4-year-old, telling them to listen to the teacher and do what the teacher says, probably a good idea. But, as soon as they start to recognize and can make decisions, then, hey, let them know. You need to keep an eye on things, You don't want to, like Kevin had mentioned, you don't want to teach them to live in fear. You want to teach them to be aware of what's in the world. You don't want them to be blindsided. No, you're not going to run around and say, hey, I think there's going to be zombies out there. I think that we're going to have some kind of outbreak and there's going to be Walking Dead coming up the street. Yeah, probably not good parenting on your part. Tell them, hey, I think that everybody's going to be criminals and whatever. Yeah, probably not a good idea. They're going to come take our food. The government, all the policemen are bad. They're out to get us. Probably not helpful for your kid. But if you're like, hey, trust what people do. Trust people's, actions. What is it Martin Luther King said, right? He said, content of their character. Well, you know what? Just because you're in a policeman uniform doesn't mean you're the great guy. But by somebody's actions, that's how you judge a man. And teach your kids that, But again, most of the cops are there to help a kid. It's, you just need to be aware that there's the possibility of danger out in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, go back a little bit. One of the things that I like to get my kids involved with is food, food prepping. We are talking about cooking and preparing meals. I like that idea. I like to get my kid involved with food storage. So we are doing some storage. So just as a cautionary tale, I had a couple of boxes of MREs, and I had him, stacking them and storing them. And about 2 months later, I went and was checking on the MREs, and I opened up the box, and there's only one MRE left in the top box. This little bastard had been eating them. But having them aware of the food that you have stored and where it is, and how to preserve it is really important. You know what I mean? If there's a situation where you can't get home and they're stuck at home by themselves, at least they can make their own food. They're not gonna be starving for a day and a half waiting for you to get back to the house. Have them aware of how to prepare food. Yeah, it's fine if they can eat, dry cereal from the box, but if they can actually make a healthy meal for themselves, and know where to get the stuff to do it, that's a great thing. And having them storing with you, storing the food, stacking it up and that sort of stuff, it gives them, in their mind, it gives them the idea of how to prepare for themselves when it comes to them moving out on their own, instead of spending all their money on going out, hanging out with friends, and then they get home and all they have is, some ketchup packets in the refrigerator. And I've been to people's houses that are, 19, 20 years old that don't know how to budget money at all and don't know how to take care of themselves. And you open the refrigerator and there's, a couple of stale beers and that's it in there. That's a real life skill that some people don't have. And it's important to teach your kids not just how to behave in public and how to behave when they're at home, but how to take care of themselves as they get older and grow into adults.
But I would even take it one step further and say that, they need to learn to trust whoever's in charge. And that's something like I listen to some audiobooks and I always hear like the kid will blurt out, hey, yeah, we store all this stuff. They do need to learn some kind of OPSEC and understanding, that, hey, not all your information is available for everybody. And also, maybe they need to defer to mom and dad or whoever's kind of running the show when you come across people that, it might be a situation where things are a little tense. One, they should be able to recognize the situation. But two, they also need to be able to, defer to your leadership. You get the cocky teenager or whatever who wants to be like, well, screw you, what you're doing isn't right. Well, maybe escalating the situation is not always the answer. And we need to teach our kids to kind of trust our judgment as a parent and let you handle business when it's time to handle business. Kids like to think they know it all, and just make sure they understand respecting authority. One of the books I had read, one of the kids was like, hey, I need to, kind of stand up for what's right. Mom and dad always taught me that, this is the good moral thing, and I need to protect that. Well, the problem is you end up putting your family, when you pick a fight, actions have consequences. And, there's 4 bad guys and you might have 7 guys. And if you pick a fight, there's a chance one of you might get hurt or something. Now, you don't want to teach your kids to shy away from a fight, but you want to make sure people are fully aware and going into decisions, with a full knowledge and not making decisions based on, emotion, because actions do have consequences. There's a lot of ways and a lot of different, ways we can learn responsibility. Yeah. A great way when we were younger is the Boy Scouts, right? I mean, definitely can learn some great skills out there. Again, I don't know anybody who's had kids in the scouting programs in the last 10 years. Yeah. I know when I was a kid, it was awesome. We did learn some real hardcore skills out there. And I also do know that even when I did do it back a million years ago, it depended what troop you joined. Right. There was one set would be all about like really hands-on, get out there and do. And other ones were more kind of, well, we sit around and babysit your kids and whatever. And it was who the leaders were and how involved they were and how much they built confidence in kids, so talk to the people, get to know them if that's something you're going to do. See what's out there. I know a lot of the religious groups, the churches and stuff have different things that, maybe go along that line and maybe even start something like that. If it doesn't exist, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's also, as your kids get older, there's a lot of getaways and different trips you can do. One, you can set up and make your own, but there are survival schools out there. Your kids can go to survival schools and do things. There are ways to do it, and that costs money. And again, the stuff, if you don't have the money or the budget or the time, maybe you learn some of these skills and you teach your kids the skills on your own. That's how the world works. You find a way. That's the thing. That's your job as a parent. You shouldn't be making kids if you're not willing to try and put effort into finding a way. Another thing, what about like they have these, school lockdowns and things like that. We actually did an episode on what to do in a, some kind of shooter situation and how to hide and how to do whatever. Maybe listen to that episode, talk to your kids about things like that, but also talk to your kids about what if you're at school and something bad happens, where do you want your kid to go? Do you want them to kind of, hey, I'm going to come to the school and get you? Do you want them to try and head home? Do you want them to, whatever? And realize the school may not necessarily be down for these situations. You can also talk to the school Maybe, you know, hey, what happens in these situations? You know, when they have the lockdown, can I come get my kid? Maybe you can't. Maybe you want to work out a plan for something else to happen. You know, you need to look at these situations as a parent and come up with solutions. You need to find a way to deal with it. You know, everybody's always texting and whatever, and see what you can do. I would say, as far as prepping, planning to bug out when you have small children, probably not a good plan. You know, maybe it's get in the car and go to grandma's, or maybe hike to grandma's at, you know, that's 5 miles away. Yeah, that might work. But as far as, you know, running off into the woods with a new baby, not going to be a fun time for you. You need to think about what you're going to do, or at least have some kind of storage locker somewhere, something that you can do, because it's not going to be fun traveling with very small children. It's not an easy way. I mean, you know, for limited stuff, you might be able to, you know, set up a bike with a trailer or something. You might be able to work out a plan. Maybe you can work out some kind of 4-wheelers or whatever. But I imagine if you live in the world where you have 4-wheelers, you probably live in a place where you might be able to fortify it and make your home more of a sanctuary. Maybe that's when coordinating with your neighbors becomes more important. You know, I was just listening to an audiobook just this week where, you know, somebody came in and was like, hey, we need to, you know, that it was like after an EMP and they lost electricity and blah, blah, blah. And the town was kind of fend for yourselves and everybody, whatever. And instead she kind of called the town meeting and was like, hey, look, there's all this food in the grocery store. All the food in the grocery store is going to rot. I know how to can and preserve food. I know how to do this. Let's all work together as a community and make it so that this is going to last for all of us. And we can, you know, those involved, you know, if we gave half back to the guy who owns the grocery store and the rest of us for doing all the work, we're going to get, you know, the other half to divide equally based on, you know, how much work they do. Things like that. My point is, if you have kids, maybe talk to and think of ways that you can work with your community to, you know, protect them and stay safe. Maybe it's your apartment building, but again, think of how water, sewer, that kind of things, they're only going to, you know, hold out so long. So, you know, it's all things you need to consider. It just takes planning, but I would say the key to having kids that are going to survive the apocalypse is, or any emergency, a hurricane, a tornado, is by having kids that are confident, having kids that, you know, feel like they can take care of themselves. Because one, not having fear is going to take them so far. And then having the skills to actually take care of themselves is going to take them even further. And, you know, all you can do is move forward. And all I can say is, if nothing else, just spending time with your kids and letting them know, you know, that you care about them and you got their back is going to, you know, make your life better anyway. And if you can teach them a skill out of it, even better. And, you know, teaching a kid to go out and take care of business, that's going to be the answer. So that's what I got. If you have ideas, thoughts, things you want to, you think that people could do to help prepare for a kid, it'd be great if you posted it in the Prepping Badass group on Facebook. You could email us some of your ideas at preppingbadass@gmail.com. If you have ideas for a new episode, something you think we need to cover that, you know, maybe we haven't covered well enough or we haven't covered it all, let us know. Otherwise, stay safe and we'll talk to you guys next week.
The Survival and Basic Badass podcast is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.